dream and every girl's nightmare.
I'm gonna have nightmares! Oh no! Oh no! Freddy is the ultimate nightmare.
Freddy's way sociable. He's a party animal.
Freddy rocks.
It's like Freddy's like addicting, and you know it gets better and better each one.
The scariest movie I've ever seen in a long time. I don't think I'll sleep tonight.
Elm Street, USA. Nice homes, nice cars, and nice kids. Only problem is, these nice kids are terrified by not-so-nice dreams.
How sweet, fresh meat.
Alice, wake up and get out! Alice, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. I pulled you in.
In Elm Street, the making of a nightmare, we'll take you behind the scenes of Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, and let you meet the man responsible for the cause of chronic insomnia of teenagers, not only on Elm Street, but around the world, Freddy Krueger.
Why don't you reach up and touch someone?
Even before Freddy Krueger began terrifying audiences, the creators and crew of the first Nightmare on Elm Street film were well aware that this menacing character might be around for more than just one picture. Rachel Talalay, the producer of Nightmare on Elm Street 4, has been associated with the Nightmare films from the beginning.
Well, first of all, Nightmare 1 was just inherently terrifying. And I knew it was a great film when I read the script and I couldn't sleep that night. I knew it was a good film when it was scary on set when you're filming it, which is almost impossible because there are a million lights and you know what they're doing and you're looking at pieces of rubber and it's still scary. And when I saw the first cut of it, it was really scary. And when you've been there every day shooting it, you know how they did everything, and it was still scary. And it still scares me today.
The man responsible for creating the character of Freddy Krueger, in addition to writing and directing the first Nightmare on Elm Street film, was Wes Craven. Craven, known for directing the cult horror classics The Hills Have Eyes and Last House on the Left, believed that creating Freddy Krueger, a man who didn't care about himself, let alone his victims, would be worth a scream or two, either awake or asleep.
With Freddy, it was that you can't get around him. He can stretch out his arms forever, and there were things that he did that were quite disgusting, but it was to show that he had no concern about his own well-being. The moment when he slices himself open. When you suddenly realize the person that's after you doesn't even care about their own body, that's a horrifying thing because you can't harm them.
Actor Robert Englund, who has played Freddy Krueger in all 4 Nightmare films, remembers being a bit apprehensive when he first met with director Craven.
If the food don't kill you, the service will.
I don't know what I expected, I guess, to see Charlie Manson sitting behind a desk carving human hearts or something, and here was this erudite, attractive gentleman, you know, and when he told me sort of his dream of how this movie should be and the mix of fantasy and horror and surrealism that he wanted to imbue in the film, I was just really taken with the man as a sort of dark artist.
The chemistry between Robert Englund and Wes Craven was apparent when the first Nightmare on Elm Street hit the screens in 1984 and became a box office smash that brought fear into moviegoers around the world. But who is Freddy Krueger? And why is he wreaking havoc on the Elm Street teenagers?
You want to know who Fred Krueger was?
He was a filthy child murderer who killed at least 20 kids in the neighborhood. Kids we all knew.
Did they put him away?
Well, the lawyers got fat and the judge got famous, but somebody forgot to sign the search warrant in the right place, and Kruger was free just like that.
What did you do, Mother?
A bunch of us parents tracked him down after they let him out. We found him in an old abandoned boiler room where he used to take his kids.
Go on.
We took gasoline. We poured it all around the place and made a trail of it out the door. Then lit the whole thing up and watched it burn. But he can't get you now. He's dead, honey, because Mommy killed him.
But surprise, thanks to box office receipts totaling over $23 million, Kruger returned in Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. This time, Freddy looked for some help in carrying out his onslaught of murders. His choice? Jesse Walsh, played by Mark Patton.
We got special work to do here, you and me. You've got the body. I've got the brain.
I think in part two, the main thing that attracted the fans to that was we had a real sensitive male lead. Instead of a typical macho teen boy, we had sort of this nerdy, sensitive kid, and he became the equivalent of our heroine in Jeopardy from part one.
And while Freddy's plans went astray in part two, it didn't stop him from trying again in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, The Dream Warriors. Part 3 also marked the return of Heather Langenkamp, who played Nancy Thompson, one of the few survivors from Part 1, who understands firsthand the reason for the kids' sleepless nights.
I know who's trying to kill you.
Don't humor us. We're not in the mood.
He wears a dirty brown hat. He's horribly burned. He has razors on his right hand. Who is he? His name is Freddy Krueger.
Why is he after us?
Yeah, and what did we do? You are the last of the Elm Street children.
The Elm Street Kid's success in killing Freddy in Part 3 proved to be short-lived, because sometimes it's hard to keep a dead man down. And Robert Englund resurfaces once again as Freddy Krueger in A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master.
You shouldn't have buried me. I'm not dead.
The Freddy Krueger phenomenon is hard to explain. His picture can be found on albums, T-shirts, and other Freddy Krueger memorabilia. Wes Craven has his own theory as to why Freddy is so popular.
You are all my children now.
I think what happens, it's almost like the hostage situation, the classic situation in a hostage situation, I'm told, is that at a certain point, the person who is the hostage will flip and try to make friends with the captor. You know, that's the best way to deal with it psychically. And I think that's what kids have done with Freddy. He was so compellingly frightening that in order to contain him and deal with him, they've made friends with him.
Certainly one of the reasons for Freddy's success has to be the unusual sense of humor that is wrapped into this monstrous character.
This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. From the prime time, bitch. Wanna suck the face?
No.
Krueger! Well, it ain't Dr. Seuss.
What you have to remember is if you let an audience laugh in a horror film, it's much easier to take them through the whole process, setting them up to scare them again. And so that's an advantage you have. The other advantage is that it's a double pun on the form. In other words, Freddy's a pop cultural phenomenon now. He's a popular culture icon. And if Freddy does a Clint Eastwood line or a Stallone line or a Pee Wee Herman line or something we've all heard on commercials or Welcome to Prime Time or something, it just reinforces that Freddie is this sort of asterisk of the culture, because he's using the culture and throwing it right back.
Welcome to Wonderland, Alice.
One thing that is no laughing matter is the horrifying face of Mr. Krueger. Robert Englund, minus the famous makeup, talked about the original concept of Freddy's look.
When it was originally designed, David Miller, on the original design in Part 1, worked on it. We wanted just half of the face destroyed by burn tissue. And then the powers to be at New Line and Wes Craven, they felt that it should be the whole face. But we wanted a melted look, and we wanted a bit of evocation of a witch. And there was an old 40s paperback book, The Shadow, Who Knows What Evil Lurks in the Heart of Men. And we based some of it on that look a little bit.
The original makeup design by Dennis Miller and modified by Kevin Yeager was applied to Englund in Nightmare 4 by Howard Berger, whose toughest challenge was in trying to keep Robert still for the 3-hour process.
The first thing I do is to get Robert in here and get him to sit still. That's the hardest part of the makeup. He's really wonderful to work with. He's so much fun, and he's so patient every day to have that makeup on. His head is totally covered. There's none of his real skin showing at all, anywhere.
The long, tedious task of Robert's transformation into Freddy Krueger begins with the application of a latex bald cap covering Robert's hair. This is necessary because all of the pre-made foam and latex skin-like pieces must be glued to cover Robert's entire head, face, and neck. The process works like a jigsaw puzzle. To create that puzzle, Robert has to have his entire head cast in plaster, which is then used to create the various pieces.
It's a rubber called foam latex. And there's 5 different chemicals that have to be mixed up in like a mix master. And we inject it into these molds. And what Kevin did is he sculpted each piece and took plaster negatives off the clay sculptures and puts foam in them and put Robert's positive of whatever, let's say his forehead, into the negative plaster mold and bake it at like 3.5 hours at 200 degrees. And we pop them out. They're all the pieces are pre-painted, which means they're painted back at the studio, and I bring them to set every day.
Howard Berger's next step is to apply the first piece of the puzzle, which is the back portion of the head and neck. Next, the ears and left side of the face is applied. Notice how even the fine details of the ear fit perfectly. And then the right side is fitted into place. Then the rest of the face is filled out with the chin piece, nose, and upper lip. And the final piece, the forehead. Finally, additional makeup is applied to achieve the desired look for the camera.
By Friday, I've been in the makeup. If I've been in the makeup 12 hours a day to 15 hours a day for 4 days, with only a night's sleep in between, I'm raw. So I'm really raw, and I start to break out the corner of my eyes where it glues into the corner of my eyes. I can barely touch there. If I just touch with the warmth of my finger now, it stings. So I have to psych myself up to put it on. But once it's on and the tingling goes away from the glue drying, I'm okay for the rest of the day, except for the heat.
However, there was one time Englund made the mistake of wearing the makeup in public.
And I was starving for some real food one day and worked about a 10-hour day, and we went across the street to this Thai restaurant that's been there for years, and we all figured it was like really good food and everything. It's next to a dog and cat hospital. That's always a bad sign for a Thai restaurant, but we all figured, because, you know, all the neighborhood is movies, studios and stuff, that, you know, I'd been there. And I went across the street, and we walked in, and everybody's used to Robert now in the makeup, all the guys on the crew. We walked in, and it was like this guy who just got off the boat with his green card from Cambodia or Vietnam, and we scared him to death. I mean, literally, the tray and all the plates went up in the air. The guy turned white. He ran in the back. I mean, the doors went waka, 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 you know, and he never came out again.
Even actress Lisa Wilcox, who plays Alice in Nightmare 4, found it took some time before she could deal with the reality of working with such a handsome leading man.
And the first day I worked with him, he was already in full makeup. Literally, I couldn't look at him for more than about 2 minutes because I just have to go, ooh, like that. So that's something, and all the blood and the guts, and you just have to completely erase your imagination and say, okay, this is real.